things which might look crazy to others in accepting our grief. For example, my story is that on the 1st July 2019,
Yeah.
my partner was murdered,
Ooh.
and it's there's no way to put around it, And for the longest time, I've been trying to hide it. I think for about a year or so, I was like, it was an accident, it was something to do with unnatural death and so on. I didn't really say it, but now I've started to say it, and tend to make all sorts of, how we accept it depends on us. And what Jermaine and I we spoke about was the difference between a natural and an unnatural death. My partner was 22 when she passed away, and someone whose parents died, they might be a bit older, but no one's to say what's old and young. I think in this, it's just defined by people, people who are not experienced in grief. And the one thing that I really found interesting was the fact that sometimes we even find privilege in our grief, as we spoke about. And for instance, for me, my memory of my girlfriend, my the whole concept of the person after death is very beautiful, because it was not harmed by physical illness, and how one's body degrade once you get something like cancer or tuberculosis and all sorts of illnesses that we have in the world right now. So I think that has been our talking point of last time, right?
Oh,
That's really powerful story, Joshua. Yeah, really applaud you for that. I could relate in a way because I, I think there will be days there where I would lie to certain friends or people about um that my dad passed away, but my mum was still alive. Not because you know, I wanted to look good, but because I didn't want to explain the whole story of what what happened, because I think as soon as I do, it's like I have to explain the whole story, and it's like I don't want to people to feel like I'm putting a burden on them, if that makes sense. So that's why I would lie just to get out of the mm, the conversation. If that makes sense. I don't know if you can relate to that, Jermaine, or you didn't
um, do you
lie.
know what? I think for me, it's like my fear was like like it's kind of like it seems normal to lose like one parent. Yeah. So like in a weird way, it's not normal. It's normal. It's not normal. But it seems for me, I felt like it was normal to lose one parent because it's almost as if, oh, you lost your mom. Oh, sorry to hear that. But there's still one parent there. But then when you say both parents, it's almost like, oh, that feels a bit, like both parents. That must be tough. And it's like that kind of embarrassment. There shouldn't be embarrassment because it's not my fault. Like we said, Joshua, I didn't choose this grief, but I think it's just embarrassment because it doesn't feel like I don't feel like I'm normal. Like there's something like a normal experience, losing someone in like your early stages of life where like you're still growing up, you're still figuring things out. So now when you have to kind of come to that reality, so sometimes you might not want to say something because you feel like maybe people can't handle it. Oh, because a lot of the time, like people around you may not know what you're going through because they haven't lost someone, and you kind of feel a bit like left out. Oh, because I've lost someone. How am I going to explain this? But then, like looking back now with that, like I haven't like started this I would say journey of talking about it more. You come to realize actually there's people. I don't like saying people have it. Oh, there's always someone that has it worse, but it goes back to the whole thing of like, like there's a privilege even though I lost both parents, there's still a privilege that I can say, you know what, yeah, I lost both parents, but I can tell the story because it's not a matter of any sort of like how can I put it? Um, how do I explain it? So like I lost both parents, and it was just due to like just illnesses, yeah. Whereas the people who lost both parents, and maybe it might be due to like, oh, both parents died in a car accident. See, like, yes, it's the same loss, but then there's a privilege in that, because I can say, oh, I lost both parents, did this, and I don't feel uncomfortable. Whereas someone else might feel uncomfortable because, oh, I lost both parents, which is already is hard. But in a car crash, it's like, how do you like? So that's why when I say there's privilege and grief, I don't mean like, you know, like I have it better than someone else, but it's understanding that like there's privilege in our grief, but it's understanding that like, you know, you need to be mindful of that. That's why like sometimes once you do meet people who've lost people in their life and they've made peace with certain things, it's not up to us to question, or what, oh, how can you be cool with that? Like, you know, if that was me, but then it's not you. Do you know what I mean? So like, and in a way, in a strange way, and I don't think I mentioned this, that same privilege we have is probably what allows us to make a bit of peace. Because had my parents maybe like they were murdered, or would I be here talking to you guys? I don't know. It's going to be a lot of, on the mind, it's going to be a lot. So even though it's still sad, you know what I mean? But unfortunately, it could be worse. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So it's like I understand my position, I understand my grief. So that's why I'm mindful of other people's grief. So like when I do come across people like yourself today, you know, you've lost someone to, maybe not in a sense where like a parent, but you've lost someone close to you, and how the person passed is tragic. So it won't be up to me to come up to you and say, oh well, you know, how can you be okay with that? Like they were murdered. Like how, you know, how, if that was me, I wouldn't be comfortable. But it's not me, you know. Like so you have to kind of get to a place where you know, everyone's journey is different, and everyone's story is hard, man. It's hard. Like it's very difficult. So you can't. I think it's up to us. And when I say us, I mean those who've experienced grief, to make it easier for the next person we come across. Because in this, like, just think of like grief as this big bubble. Yeah, we're all in it. Like if we're all kind of like, you know, just kind of like keeping to ourselves to one side, and then there's someone who's kind of who their grief is different, and we're kind of like making them feel isolated. How is that person gonna heal from that, or get to a point where they've made peace with the grief if we're not helping? You know what I'm trying to say? Like yeah, you know, we can't save the world, but we can help people around us, you know. So like, it's understanding like privileges with what comes with our grief, and you know, understanding that like, you know, yeah, we can't imagine certain things because it's not us, you know, like.
For a very very long time, I kept thinking, why me, and why would this happen to me? I've been fairly good in life, yeah, but it's just, you know, something we tell ourselves that okay, maybe it's not supposed to happen to us, maybe it's supposed to happen to worse people around us. And I'm being very very honest when I say this. You do feel like, why couldn't this happen to someone else? Why it has to be me, the one, you know, has to that has to go through with this? But I also realized, if I keep thinking like this, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to stay stuck in one place just thinking about it. And it might feel triggering to people who find it hard to move on from grief, or you know, or because we all have our own time frame in how we move forward in life. Because I don't think moving on really happens. You move forward to taking the story with you. And I thought for a very long time, why did it happen to me? Why? And but I realized, if you keep thinking why me, you're not going to go anywhere. And one of the things that I remember making peace with was the fact that the person who did it was not there anymore. He was also dead. And I've spoken to people with who have lost their close one with, you know, violent crime. And one of the things that they find really hard is the fact that the person who did the uh, perpetrator might still be out or in prison. I find peace in the fact that he's not in the world anymore. There is no one to be angry at. I was angry for, but I was not angry. It might seem very surprising for a lot of people, but I was not angry at the person who did it for a very long time. Maybe I was angry in months, maybe weeks. But as soon as I realized that he's not there anymore, there is no one to be, you know, get express anger too, I found some peace with it. The more journey of the way that I made peace with it was also the fact that I actually got to say my goodbyes uh, because the incident happened at night. What I think I got to say my goodbyes is the fact that every night we would text each other and call up each other and just tell that, okay, I'm going to sleep. If you're doing work, do it well, and when you sleep, and I love you, good night. And I did that the day that it happened. I got time to listen to her voice, text her that how much I loved her, and also say good night. But these um, realizations that I'm saying, it does not come very easy, because the same things that make me accepted it might be, you know, triggering for me. For example, I spoke to her the last time, you know, and I did not know that it would be a last time. I think I've worked really hard on myself to look at the positive side of life, to not be, put down by all the negatives. And sometimes I do. As I also mentioned in my story, if you go to my pages, I do suffer with post-traumatic stress, and the whole part of the illness is that you go in flashbacks, you go back in time, and you start to relive the moment emotionally or physically. So I feel it's more important for me to work on myself, so that, and who says you cannot live a life, you cannot laugh, you cannot smile? To be very honest, I sometimes I laugh more than most people in the room, and sometimes I even most of the time I do laugh more than them, because who says you cannot do all that? And I think the people, the one person who probably says that is myself, my own what I feel about myself. So I also realized it's about forgiving yourself, and that is something that, if I have to put it in a journey, and so right now I'm in the process of forgiving myself, that okay, I can live a life which is happy, and I'm working towards it, and I do, for anyone who might be watching it or might be checking out, just going through it, I do have to say that, no matter how bad it is, first of all, things could get worse, as Jermaine says, and it gets better. I just have to say that it does get better. Maybe for you it might be 5 years, maybe 5 months, maybe weeks, but don't let yourself feel guilty if you're,
Yeah.
finding happiness.
No, I think it's true. But one thing I've gathered of what you said is making peace, and I think that's, you see, the thing with peace sometimes it's not a, like it's subjective. So what you how you see peace is different from how I see peace, or how Ben sees peace. So I think sometimes we kind of think of it as this whole, like, you know what, I'm over it. So okay, I've made peace with it. I'm happy that this is, like, it's not that simple, like, and this is what I'm saying. It's like this back to privilege and peace, like, because like, I feel like the two go hand in hand, because
Hmm.
again, like, I'm only gonna use myself, because I don't feel like I want to speak for anyone else. Like, if my situation was different, where, like, it was, yes, it was like I lost both parents, but it was due to something very traumatic, would I be at peace? I don't know that. So, like, but it's not. I feel like subconsciously part of the reason why I'm able to, like, be how I am and be in a position where, like, I can talk about it freely is because how they didn't suffer. It wasn't like there was some sort of like even when seeing the bodies, there wasn't, there was no, like, nothing like traumatic that could leave me with just so many answers, and, like, or it wasn't even someone, like, where, like, like, for example, it was a murder where, like, did they catch the person? It wasn't that. So, like, and and just for everyone listen, when I say privilege, I don't mean like, oh, like, I'm just this person who doesn't care about everyone else, but
Hmm.
when I talk about privilege, I mean, like, there's privilege in the way, like, we don't choose our grief, but there's privilege in the way that what we make peace with. So when I say the two go hand in hand, I say that because, like, what allows us to make peace is because of our privilege, you know. Like in your case, you said the reason why you are at peace with it is because the person who murdered your partner is no longer here. Had that person still be here, I'm not saying you won't make peace, but it might be different, you know.
Exactly.
So it's those things as well, like, and that's why, like, sometimes when I come across people who are still kind of in that stage of like they want answers or they have questions because the death of their loved one, like it wasn't as, you know, it sounds weird to say, oh, it wasn't like a smooth death. That's not, but when I say smooth death, I mean like it wasn't a death where, you know, like, okay, it was an illness and, you know, we got to say our goodbyes. We got to spend a good amount of time with them. But there were some people, it's like their death, they lose someone, like I said earlier, like they lose someone or because it was a car crash. You're probably thinking, okay, like, was the person driving, what happened? You know, did they catch that? Just so many different things that and on top of that, you're dealing with grief. On top of that, you're dealing with the fact that your parents are no longer here. So it's like, it's like one thing stacked against each other, you know.
One thing that I also realized is the fact that when you tell someone, like in my case, I did not explicitly tell everyone that it has happened, although it was on the news. But a lot of people not around me were not aware of the fact that it had happened. So it's quite funny that people assume that it might be illness or might be, an accident per se, but no one imagines it to be, something like this. So I don't know where it comes from, but the fact that the first thing that people think about is illness. And what's more funny is the fact, if you tell them that, okay, it was this illness, even if it was illness, if you tell them, the conversation is cut short. It's not that much. It just very narrow, very, a
Yeah,
short conversation that, okay, they were going to this. What I've heard also is the fact that they're in a better place right now. They're not suffering, and they, you know, somehow trying to make it better, which I do. People, when we tell other people that this has happened, they do try to make us feel better and make the grief make more sense for us. Because but the thing is, it's not for them to make sense, it's for us to make sense. And a lot of things that we might say that actually make sense might not make sense to them.
yeah, exactly. This is what it is, because like even just when me and Ben met, you know, I didn't really kind of I didn't really question you about, oh, like, what happened and this, like that. Like if you were to tell me, okay, you know, this happened, my mom, like, you told me, we spoke about your mom, like, and your dad, how they passed, but I never once questioned why you've done this, like, because it's not up to me. What makes sense, what's the important thing in this journey is what makes sense to you. That's it. It doesn't have to make sense to anyone else, like, because I tell you what, because if it makes sense to you and you're able to mentally function again, then that's it doesn't matter what it looks like to everyone else.
Yeah, I think because we were able to relate straight away, like we didn't have to explain ourselves because we know that we've both been through it, and obviously we can connect straight away, you know, with just getting to know each other.
Exactly. Like it doesn't have to, you know, like, and you see when it comes to, like, even because I think I'm even guilty of this sometimes as well. When things we don't understand, yeah, we either want answers to it or we don't, if it's too complex, we just want to leave it alone. You know what? I don't really get what they're going through. I don't really understand that. You know, someone tells me they're suffering from a mental illness, I don't understand. Okay, I don't know what it's like. Let me not leave it. So when you hear something, oh, you know, this person suffers from, I don't know, let's just say, like, for example, this person suffers from like PTSD because, I don't know, they was in a war or something. Yeah, cool. Like we get it. Is, you know, because of the war. Okay, we've got an explanation. That's it. That's fine. Leave it as that.
Yeah.
You know, this person suffers from mental illness due to grief, and it's a bit like, oh well, and it's not quite clear, like, how the two link. It's not, you know, it's very like quite complex and hard. we don't have the capacity to. We're all guilty of it. We don't have the capacity to kind of like understand. I don't really get that. So let me just leave that. Like because I don't get it. But when you hear someone died due to cancer, oh, it's so sad. I'm sorry to hear that. But we've got an answer. It was cancer. So that's So it kind of makes sense. Like but the and to be honest, there's a lot of people that we've come across where you hear like or someone like someone's passed, their parents passed, and it's most of the time it's been cancer, and even with that, like from the outside looking in, it makes sense. Okay, the person died because of cancer. Then there's other people you come across. Oh, someone passed away. Their mom passed away because of suicide, and you're like,
Okay, the person just freezing and not knowing what to say. Because in my case, that is true. That, as you said, people don't really know what to say. Because, and it takes me back to the initial conversation that we were having. It just sometimes, and I agree with Ben, sometimes we do protect them from what they are about to hear.
Yeah.
Because they have no idea how to react with it and how to deal with it. I think most of the people, they're not well equipped, or just they have no understanding about how these things work, and it's not their fault as well. In life, we all get all sorts of cards, and it's we get not such good cards. They Other people might get good cards, and it's completely fine. That's life. And that has been a very huge source of acceptance for me, just to think that it's okay. Some people have it worse, some people have it, first of all, I think in life we all have struggles. There's not one person who does not have any sort of struggle. Just because my struggles might be, more than what an average person goes through, does not mean that I get to be, angry at everyone and angry at myself for it. Everyone comes first. Secondly, the most important, that I said that at myself, I don't need to be angry at myself. Rather, I need to, forgive myself, and it's okay. Because let me just explain why do people with a traumatic death might feel like angry at themselves and might have inward anger. Is the fact that I think we, and I'm saying it for myself, and a few very close friends who have gone through such experiences, is the fact that we think that we might have done something to save them. And this has been a very central part of my life since. And I think I will feel this as long as I'm alive. But as of now, I'm dealing with it a lot better. And as I said, just forgiving myself and working on, and I'm stating it again, I've worked really hard on myself to talk about it, to express, to go to the rawest of emotion, come out from that, and just express whatever I'm feeling, because it helps.
yeah.
It really does help.
I wanted to ask something. I guess kind of like to both of you, like, but that instinct of wanting to protect other people first before ourselves. do you think that's just us as humans or just as people going through grief? Because I feel like it's kind of like a thing of like as humans, we don't want to feel like, I don't know, like embarrassed over something or anything like that. So when we tell people certain things that are quite not embarrassing, but things that are quite sensitive,
Mm.
I don't know, you just don't want people to look at you different or treat you different because of what you've said or what you're going through. And sometimes I feel like, so even like just take grief aside for 1 minute. Some you might want to not share certain things or you act a certain way. And if we bring grief back into it, that's probably why, like, maybe like for myself, I wasn't really telling people I lost both parents because I just don't want people feeling I don't want people feeling sorry for me. Like, or I don't want to have to kind of explain why or even like be somewhere and the conversation goes awkward because you don't know what to say from that, like, like, oh, and then where'd you go from there? You lost both parents. Then it's like, okay, they might ask how, and then
Yeah.
and even that as well is another kind of layer of like, oh, embarrassing, because like how they died, maybe it wasn't sort of like it was traumatic, or it was some sort of you know what I mean. So again, when we come across people who are going through grief, this is what I'm saying is like with the privileges and stuff, because for someone who lost both parents due to a car accident, I don't know, I keep using that example, but it's just the one that just comes to my mind. Someone who lost parents due to a car accident, it's like that might be, it's very like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That's like it's a lot. It's a lot. But again, like we said, it's not up to, like, we should make people feel comfortable no matter what they bring, even no matter how traumatic the story is. Yeah, I know we're humans, we're not always gonna know what to say. I get it. It's understandable, but let's, like, and I'm talking to myself here. This isn't me saying that I'm the best, or I have a kind of froze when I've come across certain news about people's grief. But I feel like it's only the only thing you can do in that moment is don't make them feel like, don't make them feel alienated. So I guess, yeah. So like, what, yeah. So with you guys, how do you feel about that in terms of, do you feel like that shame comes from us as being humans, or that shame just comes from the grief?
I think it might. I think a good example I have is familiarity. So I think people get too familiar when you tell them a story about your grief, like what happened. I think they tend to say a certain nickname or something to do with the grief, but they don't. But they say it in a way that comes across as an insult, but not in a good way. So I think my issue with that is they say a certain phrase to you, but you kind of already know what they're talking about, and obviously you don't feel comfortable with it because you because they don't really understand what it's like to lose someone. They won't really understand the process of it, so they just tend to say anything without acknowledging that you're going through something in private. And yeah, I think that's why I probably tend to just avoid talking about it with certain people, because it just leads to that kind of scenario, which what I just mentioned. So
But when you say a nickname, what do you mean? Like they say a nickname?
like it hasn't happened to me personally, but there's probably there's the guy that lost both parents, or
Oh, like, okay, they
yeah,
kind of make, like, alienate you, like, oh,
yeah,
this is what I'm saying though, because it's like that was what, like, I didn't want, especially when, like, if we put it in the context of, like, not even just people, just in terms of like friendship groups, right? Like, your group of friends, and you're the only person where, to have gone through this, so you almost feel like, I felt like that, where, like, with my friends, I just felt like the odd one out, like, because everyone's cool, everyone's got their parents, and it's not, I wasn't jealous or nothing, but it's just like, right now I don't want attention on me. I don't want it, but right now I feel like it's like that because I've lost, like Jay. So I feel like sometimes, but again, like, sometimes you have to get out of that, like, not feeling sorry for yourself, and and kind of like, you know what, listen, I've made peace with this, I've owned this, and it's not up to anyone but myself what that peace looks like. You know, my only thing is just to, you know, is to keep like, you know, thriving and, you know, talking about them in whichever best way I see fit, you know. But along the way, along the journey, like in being on this grief journey, is that the people, again, like you said, like yourself, who come across, and you just have this kind of instinct, you know what, like I don't know what he's going through, but I just know, like, if you're happy with, if you're happy, you've made peace with certain parts of the story, then listen, that's all that matters, man. It's not, I'm not gonna question anything. You know, like that's just me. So like with you, Joshua, would you say, like, do you feel like as humans we have this kind of fear of being embarrassed, or do you feel like it's just, or do you feel more like that with your grief? So like, let's just say prior to you losing your partner, when it comes to certain things about yourself, did you always think, okay, if I say this, what are they gonna think of me?
I think we're already fighting very hard to not make their death, to not let their death define our life. And if we talk about it to other people who might not understand, and as Ben said about the instance with the nickname, people tend to make it the only thing about yourself, which they might not, it might not be their intention, or they might not think that how it might affect us. But if, for instance, if I say this to someone, first of all, we don't, there's no, sensitivity to it in everyday conversations. You don't go just, talking about it, because it's not expected. First of all, it's something different from the normal, I think. It's what society has made us feel like, that you are not supposed to talk about death to that much extent in your everyday conversations, right? So for instance, if I say this to someone, it just goes back to our conversation, right? They might first of all think that I am not normal in some sense. Maybe I'm going through something, and they might feel sorry for me, they might pity me, or they might try to help me in a very sympathetic way. And sympathy is not necessarily good all the time. And second of all, they might think that that's the only thing in my life. Like, they'll completely forget that, okay, I'm a student as well, and I'm a son as well, and I do sports, and I play the guitar, and I do all sorts of other things in my life. They're just going to think that, okay, he wakes up, he thinks about that, he goes to have lunch, he goes to think about, what happened, and when he sleeps, he thinks about that all the time. So it just, what people might make you think, even if it's not their intention to.
Yeah, like that's a good point, because you see for me personally, I think I had a probably a lot of maybe years just thinking, right, like this is just me. Like, even just like with the idea of the podcast, yeah. I did kind of think, okay, if we start this, are people gonna think that's all we are, just like grieving boys. There's nothing else to it. But you see that insecurity, like you have to make peace with that and know, okay, I know that I'm more than this. You know, like even like, okay, yeah, how many times me and Ben, we talk, but it's not, yeah, most of the time it is about, like, like podcast stuff, but there's more to, like, that we joke about other things. It's not just like, right, this is just us. So, but again, I feel like back to this whole, like, not having to prove yourself to anyone. It's not up to us to say, like, if I met you in the street, look, and I had a say my shirt said grief boy instead of Benja, yeah, and you see that now, you think, oh yeah, so grief boy, that's,
Yeah.
so you must have, I don't know, lost someone. And I'm like, oh well, no, I'm not. I'm more than grief. Like I like, I support Arsenal. I play Xbox. No, like, well,
Yeah.
whereas I should just walk with that. I should walk with that shirt, because I knowing that, okay, I'm more than this shirt. I don't.
Yep.
Someone might see it and think, okay, from the first instant, oh, that's what he's about. But I don't have to prove anything to you.
Yeah, I think
I know I'm more than that.
yeah, I think people forget that even though you go through grief, you also have a personality as well. You have interests as well. And I think if you talk about that to someone that goes through grief, for example, they lost someone, or you'd ask them, "Oh, what do you like, to do in your free time?" I think when you ask that, it tends to ease down what they're going through, and you tend to talk about something else, not putting too much focus on them losing a dad or daughter. I think it puts them at ease.
Yeah. But do you know, I think it's not about putting others at ease. It's more so putting ourselves at ease in whichever way, we want to do it. Because, but that's the thing that I just feel like, okay, I'm not going to say it's a gender thing, but I think for me personally, I have this kind of this innate thing of like, I need approval from others. I need to make sure that they know that I'm not like that. But sometimes it's exhausting, man. You need to let go of that. Like, it's exhausting because, there's people like, like we've met, yeah. Like, and I'm like, yeah, they because grief is this big thing, right? It's a very, very big thing. Don't get me wrong, it's a huge thing. So on the one hand, I can get why people might see it as why it defines us, but like even people doing so much amazing work on grief, but I know they're more than that. Like, for example, let me give you an example. Like people we've come across, like like Shuma from Spoken Grief. I don't know if you come across her page. Like, something like she, okay, I'm gonna say something about what she does, but I don't want to put it on the podcast. But yeah, but I know, but through like seeing just like, on her socials, I know she's more than just a woman who's lost her mum. It's the same thing with Amber. Like, I know, like from seeing her and communicating, seeing her and building that rapport with them, I know they're more than just that. Do you know what I mean? So like, they don't need to explain it to me. They don't owe anyone an explanation. We don't owe anyone an explanation. Like, you're someone, yeah, you're someone who lost your partner, but you like your tattoos. You know what I'm trying to say? So it's like there's more to it. But I think sometimes as well, yeah, like, when you do kind of create something to honor the people you've lost, it kind of seems like, okay, right, that's all that. So yeah, we do the podcast, but trust me, like, I'm a human being, like you. I'm gonna enjoy things. I don't like do this 24/7, but it's a big part of me. But it's not my whole life. You know what I'm trying to say? Like,
Yeah,
that's what it is. Like,
yeah, I agree with Jermaine. I feel like we're more than the grief, and obviously it's something that's part of us, you Josh, as well. But it's not something that we talk about 24/7. Like we talk about other things as well, but we don't want that to be the whole central point, of it. But it's still part of us.
yeah, and I think that's one of the misconceptions of when you create a space for that grief, whether it's for you to express it or for you to have others express their grief. It doesn't mean that's all there is to it. Like, I don't know, what example can I use? Like I don't know. It's I don't know. It's kind of weird because I'm trying to think of an example. I had an example I was going to use, but I don't know if it's in the right context. But yeah, back to what I was saying. I just feel like, it's more than just that. And you know what? It's all about kind of having this vision of, what you want to do with the grief as well. Because, I when I lost my parents, I never really thought of what am I going to do with this. It's just like I'm in the midst of the grief, so I'm dealing with it. I'm trying to make sense of why this has happened. You say you go through the stages and stuff. And I would even say, like, with this, like, with this the podcast, it was a thing. Like, I woke up one day and like, right, this is it. It's a podcast. It just thought, okay, a podcast, and what do I what am I comfortable to talk about? Is grief, and sometimes I kind of thought, well, would this kind of mean that, or do I say, but you know what? Would this kind of mean that that's all there is to me? But you have to let go of those thoughts if you have those thoughts. So if, like, you know, you think, wow, are people gonna think this is what I am? Because the bigger purpose is kind of like you are expressing your grief, but at the same time you're helping others as well.
And you know, in my case, it's something more permanent because I have tattoos for both my girlfriend and her brother who passed away. And a lot of people, they were like, when I was, just in conversation that I might get tattoos to, memorial tattoos, because I read that it helps a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, I always thought tattoos were cool, but that was not the point. But yeah, I remember when I, wanted to get them, a lot of people were like, maybe you're just 22, you have a whole life to look forward to. Which just made me think, why is it that I cannot, I can maybe get them and also live my life? You know what I'm saying? Maybe I'm trying not able to put it into better expression. But it's like, why do people think that we cannot, you know, um, make memorials of them or talk about them in a more concrete way and not live life? Why do they think that it's just, something that's holding us from living life, which is actually the opposite is true. When I got the tattoos, it was also a very, huge step in my journey. It made me feel so comfortable with my grief, because now I look in my body and I have a reminder of what beautiful time I had with my partner and her brother as well. And I've got their ages. Even the first tattoo I got was in her memory. And people would think things might get hard for me because I look at it and get reminded of her. But for me, it's like I look at that and I get reminded of her in a very good way. And I think people do not really understand, which is okay, and it's not for them to understand, which is okay, that if we do things in their honor, it's not keeping us from uh, living life or being happy. It's actually facilitating it in some manner.
Mm.
Yep.
That's true, because you can live with grief and still have a life. It's not one or the other. It's not like, but this is what sometimes we, maybe us as humans, fail to kind of realize, that when something as that happens, it just takes over. You feel like it defines you. So that this is it. This is you can't be in a position where you're talking about it, where like, and still, like, one day you're talking about it, the next you're crying about it, sorry, and the next day you're smiling. It's like, no, it must
Yep.
be like constant crying, constant, like, but it's not that. It's not that.
Yep.
Because what you need to understand is, like, just, it doesn't end. Like, I'm good today, like, come next month, I don't know how I'm going to be. It's just, I don't, it's just that's the journey. Like, I'm I'm just moving forward with it. I'm not leaving it behind. It comes with me, like that, and that's what it is. So, like, back to what I was saying, because it comes with us, that's why we need to be more, like, more intentional and mindful of how we treat others who are also coming with their grief as well, because there shouldn't be no, there shouldn't, there probably is in some capacity, but I feel like there shouldn't be, like, oh, because my grief is different from yours, that means I don't deserve more than you because I've lost a parent in a certain way, or I deserve more than them. It's not that. It's not. We all deserve the same thing, and that is like peace. We all deserve peace. No matter what goes on in that story, we all deserve peace. So back to what I was saying is, back to the most traumatic of things, of when it comes to grief, like, either whether it's murder or suicide, that person, who is apologies, I don't know if I'm saying the term right, like a suicide survivor. I don't know if that's the right term, or someone who is a surviving partner of someone who's been murdered, like in your case. Whatever piece to you, that is up to you. Like, I'm not, no one, none of us should make that journey harder.